Welcome to Life Stories, where every tale reveals the strength of the human spirit and the power of resilience. Today's story takes us into the heart of betrayal, redemption, and the courage to rebuild what was lost. Follow Emily and Olivia as they uncover a web of corruption that threatens the foundation their family built, only to find themselves leading the charge to restore it with integrity and hope. It's a journey of love, forgiveness, and the pursuit of truth. Subscribe now to Life Stories and join us as we begin today's powerful and inspiring story. The numbers jumped out at me like bright red flags waving furiously from my laptop screen. $300,000. That's how much money had vanished from the Bright Future Research Foundation's accounts in the past year. My tired eyes scanned the spreadsheet for the 100th time, double-checking my work. No matter how many times I analyzed the figures, the conclusion was the same. My stomach churned as the trail led to one unavoidable source: my mother. Let me introduce myself. My name is Emily, and I've always been the responsible one, the quiet one, the one who buried herself in books and data while my stepsister, Olivia, dazzled at charity galas and social events. It wasn't that I minded research was my passion, but it often felt like I was invisible compared to Olivia's effortless charm. My mother, Margaret, was the epitome of elegance and control, the driving force behind the foundation. For as long as I could remember, she'd subtly compared my achievements to Olivia's glitz, leaving me perpetually in second place in her eyes. That night, everything changed. The office was silent, save for the hum of my laptop. I was so engrossed in my work that I didn't hear Ethan approach until his voice broke the quiet. "Emily, it's almost midnight. Whatever you're working on can wait." I jumped at the sound, spinning to see him leaning casually in the doorway, a steaming mug of coffee in hand. Ethan was my colleague, a data analyst with a knack for spotting patterns others missed. "It can't wait," I replied, my voice trembling. "Look at this." I turned the laptop toward him, my heart racing. Ethan set his coffee down and leaned over my shoulder, his brow furrowing as he scanned the numbers. "The foundation's quarterly reports don't match the bank statements," I explained. "Someone's been siphoning money from the research grants." His expression darkened. "Are you sure about this?" I nodded, swallowing hard. "The signatures, the approval stamps, they all lead back to the foundation's board treasurer." I hesitated, the words catching in my throat. "My mother." Ethan's sharp intake of breath was the only sound for a moment. He straightened, his eyes meeting mine. "Emily, this is serious. What are you going to do?" Before I could answer, my phone buzzed on the desk. The screen lit up with a message from Olivia. "Mom's going crazy planning next month's gala. She says you have to come this time, no excuses." I stared at the text, my mind racing. The gala was one of the most anticipated events of the year, a glittering showcase of the foundation's achievements. Margaret poured her heart into it every year, using it to cement her influence and reputation. If I was going to confront her, the gala would be the perfect stage. "I'm going to the gala," I said, closing the laptop. But not for the reasons they think. The next morning, I arrived at the foundation's offices earlier than usual, the weight of my decision settling heavily on my shoulders. Margaret's assistant, Sarah, was already at her desk, meticulously organizing the day's schedule. "Emily, what brings you to the administrative floor?" Sarah asked with a warm smile. She had always been kind to me, a rare source of support in a world where I often felt overlooked. "I just needed to drop off some research proposals." I lied smoothly. "Is my mother in?" "She's meeting with Ryan," Sarah replied. "Something about the gala sponsorships." "Perfect." I slipped into Margaret's empty office, my heart pounding in my chest. The air was thick with the faint scent of her perfume, a blend of power and sophistication that always seemed to overshadow everything around her. I quickly connected my USB drive to her computer, the encryption software I had installed giving me remote access to her files. Later that afternoon, Ethan and I pored over the data I had downloaded. The evidence was damning: fake transactions, falsified reports, and a web of shell companies linked to Ryan's investment firm. As we worked, a new email thread caught my eye. "Here," I said, pointing to the screen. "Look at this." The correspondence revealed a sinister plan to launder money through the Gala's charitable donations. Margaret and Ryan were the masterminds, using Olivia's public image as a cover for their scheme. Ethan let out a low whistle. "Your mother and Ryan are quite the team." I clenched my fists, anger bubbling beneath the surface. And Olivia has no idea she's being used as their pawn. My phone buzzed again, this time with a call from Margaret. I hesitated, then answered, forcing my voice to remain steady. "Darling," she began, her tone sugary sweet. "I need you at the dress fitting tomorrow. Olivia's chosen the most stunning gown for the gala, and we simply must find you something appropriate." Appropriate. The word hung in the air like a knife, dripping with her usual veiled criticism. Margaret's idea of appropriate always meant subdued, forgettable, nothing that would ever overshadow Olivia. "Of course, Mother," I replied, the words bitter on my tongue. I wouldn't miss it. After hanging up, I turned to Ethan, my resolve hardening. I've spent my whole life being the good daughter, the quiet one, the one who never caused trouble. But they've crossed a line. This money was meant for medical research, for helping people. I won't let them get away with this. Ethan nodded, his expression grim. "What's the plan?" I pulled up the gala guest list on my laptop, a determined fire igniting within me. The board members, the donors, the press, it's the perfect audience. Margaret always taught me that presentation is everything. It's time to show her just how well I've learned that lesson. As I began gathering the evidence into a presentation, my hands steadied for the first time in days. The gala was 3 weeks away, just enough time to ensure every detail was perfect. Margaret had always underestimated me, but this time, I would be the one in control. The morning sunlight poured through the large windows of Bright Future's downtown Chicago headquarters. But the warmth didn't reach the icy determination in my chest. Each step I took toward unraveling the truth felt heavier than the last. I wasn't just exposing fraud, I was uncovering years of manipulation and deceit from the woman who had raised me. Margaret's assistant, Sarah, was one of the few people I trusted. Though I hadn't shared my full suspicions with her yet, I knew she had always cared about the Foundation's mission. I decided she could be an ally. But I had to be cautious. "Sarah," I said casually, stepping up to her desk. "Quick question, do you know where the physical copies of the audit reports are kept? My department needs to review the latest financials, and I want to cross-check something." She hesitated, her eyes flicking toward Margaret's office. "They're stored in the secure archive room, but you know your mother doesn't like anyone accessing those without her direct approval." I gave her a reassuring smile. "Of course. I'll run it by her first. Thanks, Sarah." That was a lie, but I wasn't about to let my mother bury the evidence. I needed those reports and more. Later that evening, Ethan and I worked through the files I had already retrieved. It was a tedious process, combing through email chains, financial records, and correspondence that spanned years. Ethan, ever the optimist, tried to keep my spirits up with sarcastic quips and occasional coffee runs. But the gravity of what we were uncovering weighed on us both. "These shell companies," Ethan said, pointing at his screen. "They're brilliant in their simplicity. Most people wouldn't think twice about them because they seem legit. But look at the owners, different names, same IP address, all registered within days of each other. Your mother and Ryan really went all in on this." I nodded, feeling a mixture of anger and disbelief. They're funneling money through these fake companies, then routing it to offshore accounts. And Olivia, my voice trailed off. "What about Olivia?" Ethan prompted, glancing at me. "She has no idea. I said, shaking my head. She's the perfect face for this. She's glamorous, charming, and completely unaware that she's being used to legitimize their scheme. They've made her the unwitting cover for their corruption. Ethan frowned, his usual humor replaced by a rare seriousness. Emily, you need to tell her. I hesitated. Olivia and I had never been particularly close. She was the golden child in Margaret's eyes, the one who could do no wrong, while I toiled away in the shadows. But as much as I resented her at times, I couldn't let her continue being a pawn in their game. The opportunity presented itself the next day when Olivia showed up at my office. Lunch bag in hand. She swept into the room like a summer breeze, her designer dress and perfect smile masking the tension beneath. Surprise, she said, setting the bag down. I brought sandwiches from your favorite deli. I figured you could use a break. I quickly minimized the spreadsheet on my screen, my pulse quickening. Thanks, Olivia. That's thoughtful of you. She perched on the edge of my desk, her perfectly manicured fingers drumming against the wood. Honestly, I needed a break too. Mom's driving me insane with this gala planning. Trevor's been weird lately too, secretive. Always on the phone with her. Sometimes I feel like I'm just a prop in their world. Her words caught me off guard. For the first time, I really looked at Olivia. Behind the flawless exterior, there was a flicker of vulnerability I hadn't noticed before. Olivia. I started cautiously. If there was something important, something you needed to know, would you want me to tell you? She tilted her head, her smile fading slightly. Of course. Why? I glanced at the door to make sure no one was listening, then lowered my voice. Because there's something you need to know about the gala. About Mom and Trevor. But it's not something you're going to want to hear. Her brow furrowed. What are you talking about? I hesitated, my stomach twisting with nerves. Not here. Meet me at the coffee shop down the street tonight. I'll explain everything. That evening, I laid everything out for her, every piece of evidence, every fraudulent transaction, and every detail of how she was being used. Olivia's face went from confusion to disbelief to anger as the truth sank in. They've been using me, she asked, her voice trembling. All those events, all those photo ops, it was all a lie. I nodded, my heart aching for her. I'm sorry, Olivia. I didn't know how to tell you. But I couldn't let you walk into that gala blind. She sat back, staring at the table for a long moment. Then, to my surprise, she straightened her shoulders, her expression hardening. If they think they can use me, they've got another thing coming. I blinked, taken aback by her sudden resolve. So, you're in? Oh, I'm in, she said, a fierce determination lighting her eyes. Nobody uses me as a pawn, not even Mom. For the first time in years, I saw a glimpse of the sister I had always hoped for, someone who could stand by me. Not against me. Together, we would take on the lies and corruption that had tainted our family for far too long. The night of the gala arrived faster than I'd anticipated. The Bright Future Research Foundation's annual gala was a glittering affair, held in the heart of Manhattan, where the city lights outside the venue mirrored the opulence within. Guests in elegant gowns and tailored tuxedos sipped champagne as they mingled, unaware of the storm brewing beneath the surface. I stood near the entrance, my clutch holding the USB drive that contained all the evidence we had gathered. My heart pounded as I scanned the room. Margaret, resplendent in a midnight blue gown, was the picture of confidence, effortlessly charming the board members and key donors. By her side was Ryan, his sharp suit and polished smile masking the rot beneath. Emily. Olivia's voice broke through my thoughts. I turned to see her approaching, her emerald green dress catching the light and making her look every bit the dazzling socialite Margaret had groomed her to be. But tonight, there was something different in her eyes, determination. Are you ready? She asked, her voice steady but low. I nodded, glancing toward the stage where the evening's program was set to begin. Ethan's already in the AV booth. He'll start the broadcast as soon as you're on stage. Olivia hesitated, her usual confidence faltering for a moment. What if this backfires? What if people don't believe us? I placed a hand on her arm, squeezing gently. They'll believe the truth when they see it. We've got this. The evening unfolded as Margaret had planned, each moment meticulously choreographed to showcase the foundation's achievements. She took the stage, her voice commanding as she welcomed the attendees and spoke of the foundation's bright future. I watched from the sidelines, my hands clenched tightly around my clutch. And now, Margaret announced, her voice brimming with pride, it is my pleasure to introduce my daughter, Olivia, who will share our vision for Project Legacy. Applause filled the room as Olivia ascended the stage. Margaret stepped back, her smile as radiant as ever, completely unaware of what was about to unfold. Olivia took a deep breath, her hands gripping the podium. Thank you, Mother, she began, her voice clear and steady. Before I share the vision for Project Legacy, I want to say something personal. I saw Margaret's smile falter slightly, her eyes narrowing. This wasn't in the script. All my life, Olivia continued, I've been proud to represent the foundation. I believed in its mission, in the good it was doing. But tonight, I've learned that things aren't always what they seem. A murmur rippled through the audience. Margaret's smile froze, her knuckles whitening as she gripped the edge of her chair. Olivia pressed on. The truth is, Project Legacy isn't about charity. It's about greed. It's about stealing from the sick and desperate to line private pockets. Gasps filled the room as the screens behind Olivia lit up, displaying financial records, email chains, and evidence of the fraudulent transactions. Ethan had done his part perfectly, broadcasting the data to every donor, board member, and even the press. Margaret shot to her feet, her composed facade cracking. That's enough, she snapped, her voice sharp and panicked. Security. But it was too late. The evidence was already out. The audience erupted in chaos, with phones flashing as attendees captured the moment. Reporters pushed forward, shouting questions. I stepped onto the stage, joining Olivia. The evidence has been sent to law enforcement, I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. This foundation was built on lies and corruption. But tonight, we're putting an end to it. Margaret lunged for the podium, her fury barely contained. You ungrateful little, she began. But her words were cut off as uniformed officers entered the room. Margaret Reynolds, one of them announced. You're under arrest. Margaret turned to me, her eyes blazing with anger. You think you've won? You've destroyed everything. No, I said, meeting her gaze without flinching. You destroyed yourself. We're just making it right. As the officers led Margaret and Ryan away, Olivia and I stood side by side, watching the scene unfold. For the first time, I felt a weight lifting off my shoulders. A reporter stepped forward, microphone in hand. Ms. Reynolds, what happens to the foundation now? I exchanged a glance with Olivia. We start over, I said firmly, with transparency, honesty, and a commitment to the people who need us most. The night that was meant to be Margaret's crowning achievement had become her downfall. But for Olivia and me, it was the beginning of something new, a chance to rebuild. Not just the foundation, but ourselves. The gala was over, but the echoes of its chaos reverberated for days. The media frenzy surrounding Margaret's arrest made national headlines, labeling it the legacy scandal. The Bright Future Research Foundation, once a symbol of hope, was now synonymous with corruption. Olivia and I spent the next few days drowning in meetings, interviews, and legal proceedings, barely having time to catch our breath. The first morning after the gala, I found myself sitting in a stark, fluorescent-lit conference room at the New York Federal Courthouse. A thick folder of evidence sat in front of me, its contents the result of countless sleepless nights. Across the table. The lead detective leaned forward. Pen poised over his notebook. "Walk us through everything. Ms. Reynolds," he said. His tone was professional but not unkind. "When did you first suspect something was wrong?" I took a deep breath. My voice steady despite the knot of nerves in my chest. "About 3 weeks ago. I was analyzing the Foundation's financial reports when I noticed discrepancies between the grant allocations and the bank statements. As I recounted the events, from the initial discovery to the Gala's dramatic reveal, I couldn't ignore the weight of what we had done. Margaret wasn't just a public figure, she was my mother. Unraveling her web of deceit had come at a steep cost. Still, as I spoke, I thought of the researchers whose projects had been shelved and the patients waiting for breakthroughs that never came. For them, it had been worth it. Olivia joined me later that afternoon to give her own testimony. Unlike the polished socialite persona she had carried for years, today she was raw and unguarded. Her voice cracked when she spoke about Trevor's betrayal and how deeply it had shaken her trust. "He was supposed to be my partner," she said, her hands trembling as she gripped the edges of her chair. "But instead, he and Margaret used my image, to sell a lie. I can't believe I didn't see it sooner." The detective nodded sympathetically. "It's not uncommon for people to trust those closest to them. What matters now is that you're taking responsibility and helping us set things right." Later that evening, back at my apartment, the weight of the day hit me all at once. I sank onto the couch, exhaustion pulling at every muscle. Olivia was there too, sitting cross-legged on the floor, flipping through news articles on her phone. "They're calling us whistleblowers," she said, her voice heavy with a mix of disbelief and pride. "Can you believe that?" I managed a small smile. "Honestly, I'm just glad people are finally hearing the truth." Her phone buzzed with another notification. This time an update about Trevor. He had taken a plea deal, trading information for a reduced sentence. Margaret, on the other hand, was adamant in her denial, convinced she could talk her way out of the charges. "Do you think she'll ever admit what she's done?" Olivia asked, looking up at me. I shook my head. Margaret spent her entire life building a persona of control and perfection. Admitting fault would mean unraveling everything she's ever stood for. The next day brought another challenge, a meeting with the Foundation's board. The members, once loyal to Margaret, now looked shaken and unsure. The chairman, an older man with kind eyes, stood to address us. "Ms. Reynolds," he began, his voice steady but firm, "your actions at the gala, while shocking, have forced us to confront the truth. The Foundation is at a crossroads. We can either rebuild or let it crumble. But we need your help to move forward." Olivia and I exchanged a glance, a silent understanding passing between us. For years, the Foundation had been a source of contention in our family, a symbol of Margaret's ambition and our exclusion. Now, it was an opportunity to redefine what it stood for. "I'll take the lead on research and oversight," I said, my voice firm. "Every donation, every grant, it all needs to be tracked and transparent. And I'll handle public relations." Olivia added, "We need to rebuild trust with our donors and the public. That starts with showing them we're different." The chairman nodded, relief washing over his face. "Thank you, both of you. Let's rebuild this the right way." As Olivia and I left the boardroom that evening, a sense of purpose settled over me. The road ahead would be long and difficult. But for the first time, it felt like we were in control not just of the Foundation, but of our own lives. Outside, the city buzzed with its usual energy, the chaos of the gala already fading into memory for most. But for Olivia and me, it was just the beginning. We weren't just cleaning up the mess Margaret had left behind, we were creating something entirely new, something honest, transparent, and driven by the values we'd always believed in, even when she hadn't. The following weeks were a blur of late nights, early mornings, and endless to-do lists. The Bright Future Research Foundation was in shambles. And Olivia and I were tasked with rebuilding it from the ground up. Every meeting, every decision felt monumental, as though one misstep could send the entire organization crashing down again. Our first challenge was addressing the staff. The foundation's employees had been left reeling by the scandal. Their morale shattered. Many of them had worked tirelessly for years, believing they were part of something meaningful, only to learn that their efforts had been undermined by corruption at the highest level. We gathered everyone in the main conference room, a space that once buzzed with excitement but now felt heavy with silence. As Olivia and I stood at the front of the room, I could feel the weight of their expectations pressing down on me. "Good morning, everyone," I began, my voice steady but soft. "I know the past few weeks have been incredibly difficult for all of you. For us too. Learning the truth about what was happening behind the scenes about the betrayal of our mission was devastating." Olivia stepped forward, her presence commanding yet approachable. "But we're not here to dwell on the past. We're here to move forward, to rebuild this foundation into what it was always meant to be, a beacon of hope, of integrity, of real change." One hand shot up in the crowd, belonging to Dr. Reynolds, one of our most respected researchers. "How do we know this won't happen again?" he asked bluntly. "How do we know you're not just another version of Margaret?" The room fell silent, all eyes on us. I swallowed the lump in my throat, recognizing the validity of his question. "You don't," I said honestly, meeting his gaze. "Not yet. Trust has to be earned, and we're ready to earn it. That's why we're implementing new transparency measures starting today. Every donation, every grant, every expenditure will be tracked in real time and made accessible through a public database. You'll know exactly where every dollar goes." Olivia nodded. "We've also brought in an independent auditing firm to ensure that every decision is above board. And we're appointing a staff council to represent your voices in major decisions. This foundation doesn't belong to one person anymore, it belongs to all of us." The murmurs of uncertainty began to shift into nods of cautious approval. The skepticism in Dr. Reynolds' eyes softened, and I felt a flicker of hope. After the meeting, Sarah pulled me aside. "You handled that well," she said, her voice warm but firm. "But you've got a long road ahead. Margaret's shadow looms large, and people will be watching your every move." "I know," I replied, sighing. "But that's how it should be. No more secrets." The next challenge was reconnecting with the donors. Many of them had withdrawn their support in the wake of the scandal, wary of being associated with corruption. Olivia took the lead, setting up a series of one-on-one meetings to rebuild relationships and regain their trust. At the first meeting, held in a small, unassuming conference room, Olivia and I faced one of our largest donors, a stern woman named Mrs. Carter. "I believed in this foundation," Mrs. Carter said, her tone sharp. "And I believed in Margaret. That trust is gone. Why should I believe in you?" Olivia leaned forward, her voice steady and sincere. "Because we're not asking for your trust right now. We're asking for the chance to earn it back. Every dollar you donate will be tied to a specific project. You'll see the impact firsthand. And if we fail to deliver, you have every right to walk away." Mrs. Carter studied Olivia for a long moment before nodding. "You've got 6 months. Show me results." The breakthroughs came slowly at first but began to snowball. Within weeks, the public database was live, showing real-time updates on how funds were being allocated. Researchers began reporting progress, and donors started trickling back. One afternoon, Ethan burst into my office with a triumphant grin. Dr. Reynolds' cancer trial just hit a major milestone. He's crediting the renewed funding for pushing the project forward. I smiled, a genuine warmth spreading through me for the first time in weeks. That's what this is all about. The foundation was changing, not just in structure but in spirit. For the first time, it felt like a place of possibility, where every effort was rooted in the values we had promised to uphold. Late one evening, Olivia and I stood in the foundation's lobby, now adorned with a new logo symbolizing transparency and renewal. She turned to me, her expression soft but determined. "We're doing it," she said. "We're really doing it." I nodded, feeling a mix of pride and relief. It's not perfect, but it's real. And that's more than it's ever been. As we locked up for the night, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. The foundation wasn't just being rebuilt, it was being redefined. And so were we. The weeks stretched into months. And slowly but surely, Bright Future began to live up to its name. What had once been a symbol of betrayal was transforming into something meaningful, something honest. The shadows of Margaret's corruption lingered. But each day brought new victories, small and large, that pushed them further into the past. Olivia and I fell into a rhythm, balancing our respective roles with an ease that surprised us both. She had a natural gift for connecting with people, her charisma disarming even the most skeptical donors. I focused on the logistics, ensuring every new policy, every financial transaction, was transparent and accountable. One morning, Olivia called me into her office. Her desk was cluttered with folders and press releases, a sight I was beginning to associate with her newfound dedication. "I've been thinking," she said, gesturing for me to sit. "We've done so much to rebuild the foundation's structure. But what about its heart? We need something that shows the world who we are now, a gesture that proves we're serious about making a difference." I raised an eyebrow. "Like what?" "A new initiative," she said, her eyes lighting up. "Something bold and impossible to ignore. I want us to launch the largest pediatric research fund in the country. Full transparency, full accountability, and a commitment to deliver measurable results within 5 years." I blinked, stunned by the scope of her idea. "That's ambitious." "Exactly," Olivia said, her grin infectious. "We need to show people that we're not just cleaning up a mess, we're creating something better. Something that matters." I leaned back, the weight of her words sinking in. For so long, the foundation had been defined by its scandals. This was our chance to redefine it, to make it stand for something truly meaningful. "I'm in," I said, and Olivia's smile widened. "Let's do it." The announcement of the Pediatric Research Initiative was met with widespread attention. News outlets that had once covered the scandal were now highlighting our efforts to make amends. Olivia spearheaded a media campaign, emphasizing our commitment to transparency and the tangible impact of every donation. I worked with the researchers to outline the program's goals, ensuring every dollar would directly fund groundbreaking studies. The initial response was overwhelming. Donations poured in from individuals and organizations who believed in second chances. One night, after another long day at the office, I found myself sitting in the quiet of the foundation's new open-concept lobby. The glass walls and bright lights symbolized the transparency we were striving for, but the weight of the journey still pressed heavily on my shoulders. Ethan found me there, a cup of coffee in hand. "You should be celebrating," he said, handing me the mug. "The pediatric fund just hit $10 million. That's no small feat." I smiled faintly, taking a sip. "I know. It's just, sometimes I wonder if it's enough. If we can ever truly make up for what Margaret did." Ethan sat beside me, his usual humor replaced by a rare moment of seriousness. "Emily, you and Olivia have already done more than most people would. You've taken something broken and turned it into hope. That's not just enough, it's everything." His words stayed with me as the days went on, driving me to push harder. Olivia and I worked tirelessly, attending conferences, meeting with researchers, and connecting with communities that the foundation had previously overlooked. Each success felt like a step toward redemption, not just for the foundation but for ourselves. The turning point came at a national pediatric research summit, where Olivia and I presented the initiative's first-year results. The data was clear. The funding had accelerated progress on multiple fronts, from rare genetic disorders to innovative cancer treatments. As I stood at the podium, looking out at the audience, I felt a surge of pride. "This is just the beginning," I said, my voice steady. "We're not here to erase the past, we're here to build a better future. Together, we can create a legacy worth believing in." The applause that followed was thunderous. But it wasn't the approval of the crowd that mattered most to me. It was the knowledge that we were finally on the right path. That evening, Olivia and I sat together in her office, the summit's success still fresh in our minds. She raised a glass of sparkling water, her smile warm and genuine. "To second chances," she said. "To building something real," I replied, clinking my glass against hers. As the city lights twinkled outside, I realized that bright future wasn't just a name. It was a promise, a commitment to truth, integrity, and the power of starting over. And for the first time, I believed in it with all my heart. As the sun set over the city, casting a golden glow on the Bright Future Research Foundation's new logo, I stood by the window of my office, watching the world move forward. The journey to get here had been anything but easy. We had faced betrayal, heartbreak, and the weight of rebuilding something tainted by lies. But through it all, we discovered strength not just in each other, but in the power of truth and the courage to do what was right. Olivia joined me, her expression one of quiet pride. "We did it," she said softly. "We're just getting started," I replied, knowing there was still so much work to be done. This wasn't the end, it was the beginning of a legacy built on hope, integrity, and second chances. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to Life Stories for more inspiring journeys.